This podcast is a proud member of the Fan Hub 100. Football without fans is nothing, so we've partnered with Fan Hub to put fans first. Search Fan Hub app to play your part in the journey.
Welcome back to another Mackem in the Middle podcast, and once again another match preview. We are at the business end of the season, with every fixture now being a huge one, and as the saying goes, no game is bigger than the next one, and that's certainly the case this Saturday, as Charlton are the visitors this weekend. So to get a good idea on the opposition, I am joined again by Charlton supporter Terry. You doing well, mate?
I'm doing okay, Josh. Yes. Thanks, mate. And you guys?
I'm doing great. Obviously, it's a good time to be a Sunderland fan at the moment.
Yeah, isn't it just,
It is. And it was over 6 months ago we last spoke on one of these podcasts, of course, after the reverse fixture, which did, of course, finish a very entertaining 0-0 draw. In terms of off the pitch, nothing much has changed in that time. Obviously, we're still all locked in the house. We're still not able to attend the games as fans, but I'm still in need of a haircut as well. But basing off what's happened on the pitch, what's the difference with Charlton now in comparison to the side that we faced 6 months ago?
Cool, that's a good question. I mean, there's some similarities. The majority of the squad is the same, but I think we had a conversation back before the first game, whereby we'd just been taken over.
Yeah.
Trouble is, we'd been in a transfer embargo, so we couldn't sign anybody for the majority of the transfer window, and we just managed to get in some bodies just before the end of the transfer window. And I think we both said at the time, looking at those names that we had, it looked quite favourable and it looked quite positive going forward. As it turned out, not so much. I mean, a few things happened as well. We had a couple of injuries. We went on the 9 game, I think it was, even unbeaten run. But the basis of that run is we had 2 real solid centre halves and a very speedy outlet down the wing in Alfie Dirty. All 3 of them got injured pretty much the week after we spoke, I think. So the wheels fell off a little bit. Yeah, I mean, basically we had a completely different side to the side that we faced at Wembley, for example. And the side that we got promoted with, and even the side we had halfway through the championship. But and the problem was, I think, that Lebo had was that he was trying to get the same tune and play the same tune out of a completely different set of players, and it just didn't, it didn't work. But he found a way of making it work in that initial period where we were solid at the back, and we had somebody like Doughty, who was frighteningly quick and could score goals. I mean, I don't think you can underestimate just how good the kid is. Yeah, and he's out for the season, and now subsequently, obviously, we've sold him, but. We struggled then to try and get a formula that worked. We'd win the odd game, but then we'd lose a couple and draw a couple, and then we'd win the odd one and lose a couple. And frustration started to set in, not just with the fans, but with the whole squad and the whole setup, because it just wasn't working. And I think most people, me included, were desperate for Lebo to make it work because he'd taken us on such a good journey up to that point. But it was a bit like the more he tried, the worse it got. We were subject to a few absolute world-beating goals at the time as well. It seemed to when we lost by somebody that spanked one in from 30 yards, or an unstoppable effort, or the bounce of the ball just went against us. And we started looking at hard luck stories, and that's always a bad sign, isn't it? When you start grasping at bad luck stories as to the reason you're not really, it's not really happening for you. So lots of things just started going against us, really, and something had to come to a head, and it did. And Lebo decided that Birmingham was a slightly better option than the Charlton.
Yeah, and I suppose it's always a case in this league when one thing goes against you, seems to just build up very quickly, doesn't it?
Well, some of that, I mean, sometimes can be an excuse as well. I think, confidence then goes. And I remember speaking to a former player about it, and he said that when your confidence goes, you can be the best player in the world. But when your confidence goes, the football starts to look like a tennis ball. So controlling a tennis ball is that much harder, and your football boots become concrete instead of leather. And things. The first touch goes and all this sort of stuff, and then you try harder and it gets worse. And so, football players generally are confidence players, and ours hit rock bottom basically.
Yeah. Well, as I said, it is a big game, and it's a very big game for Sunderland, and every game will be now. But it's also a huge game for Charlton, albeit for slightly different reasons. We are, of course, hoping to chase automatic promotion. We've got the games in hand. Whereas you're chasing the playoffs, having played more than the teams around you. How do you see Charlton approaching the game?
Well, yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, I've been lucky enough to speak to Nigel Atkins about it, and obviously he's inherited a squad and a side that isn't his. So he's got to try and make the best of what he's got. And we've got good players, don't get me wrong. We've got some very good players, especially in that last transfer window. We did sign some. We managed to sort of turn some players around and get some better players in. So we've got some good players. It's just a case of him getting them to work in the way that he wants to. And I think the first thing we had to address was the defensive situation. We were letting in far too many goals. I think out of the top 8, I think we've let in more goals than anybody else by some considerable distance. I think we're on 50 at the minute. So that had to be addressed, and the signs are that has been done. Yes, we've had the 2 defenders I spoke about before. They've come back, Innes and Famwo, and Innes was a colossus last Saturday in that win. So we get that addressed. We're probably not as fluid going forward as we used to be. So I think we won't be, probably not anyway, battering people 3 or 4-0. So I think you'll see a lot of games decided by the odd goal going forward. And hopefully, if we can keep a clean sheet, then they'll go in our favour. But, there's still those frailties. We saw, even though we won against Doncaster and we played well, still the odd frailty where, people giving the ball away in stupid areas, making silly mistakes that they shouldn't normally do. Hopefully, Nigel Atkins another week to iron that out, and we'll see. But you're flying. I mean, and it's good to see. By the way, if we do sneak in the playoffs, we don't want you. All right, so we want you to go up.
You got a good record against us in the playoffs, though, don't you?
Well, it can't happen 3 times in a row, can it? So we want you to go up. And not just that, I think Charlton and Sunderland fans have got a good connection. I think you deserve to be up there. So we'd like to see you get automatic as a club, not just because we don't think we'll beat you in the playoffs this time, but we just think you deserve to be there, and your fans have been through enough. You need to go up.
Yeah, I don't think I could go through another playoff final against Charlton with the 93rd minute winner against us.
To be honest, mate, I don't particularly want to go through it again, and we won. So Christ knows what Sunderland fans are thinking. But no, I think you're good enough. I think, and I've got a sneaking suspicion it might be. Hull haven't hit real rocky patch yet. And I think they're due one. So looking at you got games in hand. Peterborough are on a roll. You're on a roll, and I think it wouldn't surprise me if Hull just wobbled a little bit.
Yeah. Well, as a Sunderland fan, I see Saturday's game as a must-win for Sunderland. Obviously, we did draw against Peterborough, so in terms of second and third, nothing's really changed. We are still in control of that one. Win our game in hand, we go above Peterborough. If we win our 2 games in hand, we go above Hull. But with that finishing a draw, obviously we've got Charlton on Saturday at home. I say that as a must-win for Sunderland. Is it the same from a Charlton perspective, or is a point something you would take right now if offered?
I think if you look at the maths, then it looks like a must-win. But I think we're a bit more realistic than that. Bearing in mind where we've been, and we're on a decent run. We've had I think the last 6 games, 3 wins, 3 draws. You're on a 4-win, 2 draws scenario. I think as the 3 above us in the form table are. So I think from our point of view, I wouldn't be too dissatisfied with the point given the form you're in. And so I think from that point of view, I think I'd be. Most Charlton fans would be relatively happy with the point, but then that will depend on what happens afterwards, of course.
Yeah.
And we've got a decent away record. I think we're 2nd or 3rd in the away form guide, so we can play away from home. We know how to win away from home, so it'll be a tough game. I think it wouldn't surprise me again if it's a draw, but I think it'll be if it is decided by a victory, it'll be the odd goal. I don't see either of us to sides romping away with it. Of course, who knows after seeing some of the results in this season. I mean,
exactly, yeah.
Norwich,
The Peterborough one comes to mind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, strange things can happen. Of course they can. And you've got players in form. I mean, McGeady, who couldn't really cut it for us in the Championship, but then was he given a fair enough shake? And he wasn't really fit, to be fair. He's now on fire for you guys. And the guy I picked out for you early in the season, where you, I think most of your fans wanted him out, was Charlie White.
Charlie White, yeah, I remember that one.
He can score goals in this league, and 23 already, isn't it? So I think your next best is 6, isn't it? After him.
Yep, and that's Grant Ledbetter.
Yeah, so I mean, you look at sides, and if they're capable enough, and I think my one worry for you guys would be that if you come across sides that can actually keep Charlie White quiet in front of goal, then you've got to find other places to score from. But McGeady can do that, so that's a bonus for you. And Ledbetter, as you say, has got 6, but that would be my only concern for you guys. If somebody keeps White quiet, then your goals have got to come from somewhere else. Whereas we don't score many, but we've spread it about a bit more.
Yeah. I think the good thing is, obviously, Charlie White was in great form earlier in the season. I say earlier, maybe 3, 4, 5 weeks ago. He has sort of dropped off a little bit. He's stopped scoring. But with that, the other players have started to step up a little bit more. So McGeady's getting a few more goals. He got the equaliser against Peterborough. I think Jordan Jones has got a couple. Lyndon Gooch obviously got the winner at Wembley. So the other players are starting to chip in with the goals now that White is dropping off. We've got Ross Stewart, who obviously scored on his debut, who I'll be interested to see if he starts against Charlton or not, because he wasn't great against Peterborough. But you led on quite likely, because one player I do want to talk a little bit about is, of course, Aidan McGeady. He didn't start the season for us, and he didn't feature in the game against you because Phil Parkinson just didn't rate him as a player. And as a Sunderland fan who's watched every single game he's played in this season, of course, he's top of the assist charts this season, despite missing, I think it was the first 3 months. You've briefly talked about him there, but what did you make of his performances during his time at Charlton?
I like Aidan McGeady. I mean, I'm biased because obviously I've got Irish connections in the family, and he was a great player for the Republic. So I like Aidan McGeady. I think he's a good player, and I'd sort of put him in a similar position as Johnny Williams was for us.
Mm-hmm.
Comfortably past his best on the sell-by date, but still capable, still very, and especially in League One, by the way. So I think with Aidan McGeady and a little bit like Johnny Williams, but I think certainly more so for Aidan McGeady, is that you've got to be prepared to let him do his thing. I think you've got to let him roam around. Don't give him a job to do, and you'll probably find that in 75% of the time, maybe that's unfair, maybe 50%. He'll attempt stuff that you sort of hang your head and think, what on earth do you do that for? When I'm shooting from 30 yards and instead of passing, because he used to be capable of doing that comfortably, and now maybe not so much. But what he can bring you, and as you said, the assists and the odd special goal, I think if he can be the difference, like Johnny Williams could have been for us at times, where in tight games he can win you it, and or at least rescue a point. So the problem is, if it is a problem, is having players around him where you can afford to have him as a bit of a passenger. And when Johnny Williams this season for us, we didn't have the midfield around him, as we did have in our last time in League One and to a lesser extent in the Championship. We didn't have the players around him to give him that space, to allow him to just do his stuff and not worry about him tracking back or not worry about him losing the ball in the midfield. So you put under pressure because you have people that can mop up and get him out of trouble. If you've got a midfield that can do that, then I think Aidan McGeady is valuable for you.
Yeah. And obviously going back to the game, which was a long time ago, and it feels like an eternity ago, but it was, I say only 6 months ago, it's still a long time ago, but it did finish 0-0, and Sunderland just weren't great on the day, and they did lack that creativity, they did lack that Aidan McGeady. If I think rightly, obviously Jordan Jones only signed for us in January, so he wasn't involved. I don't think Chris Maguire started the game either. Not sure if he came on.
I think he was injured, wasn't he? Chris Maguire?
He might have been injured, yeah. I think Lyndon Gooch was the only kind of creative player that actually played. I think we started with a 5 at the back. I think that was when we actually had defenders, funnily enough. Luke O'Nien's been slotted in at centre half. I think he might have started that game attacking midfield, actually. Or potentially a wing back. I'm not entirely sure what he played there. But was Aidan McGeady the player that Sunderland were essentially just missing on that day.
Do you know? I think yeah, you could say that. I'd say that both sides were struggling. I mean, that game, if I remember rightly, that game was the start of our sort of 8 to 10 game unbeaten run.
Yeah.
And we'd been struggling up to that point, especially defensively. So we, I think we went out to nullify you more than anything. I think regardless of whether Aidan McGeady had been there or not, he might have been a difference. I don't know, but it was, from my memory, it wasn't a special game at all. I think, even though you say you didn't play well, I still think you had about 3 more shots, 3 more attempts, 3 times more attempts at goal than we had, and we were at home. We, as you say, it looked on the setup that we were going to play a back 3, but it ended up a back 5, I think. And it wasn't until Flanagan got sent off. It wasn't. I think that was
20 minutes from the end, I think.
Yeah, 20 minutes in, and we perked up a bit after that for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But up to that point, it was a snore fest, as I remember, and neither side really. I think neither side. If you looked at both sides at that point, you thought we were a world away from getting anywhere near the automatics or even playoffs at that point. And so I think both sides have had to go through a transformation, and you've gone through it a bit earlier than us with the changing of the manager in December, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know too much about your new guy, other than he brings with him a bit more steel than perhaps you've had in the past few managers, and I think he adds a bit of an edge. He's got a bit of a reputation for that, as probably you saw against the game against Oxford. You know, you're not going to get steamrolled by anyone, and you're going to back yourselves into your out of your own corner. So, and that's important, especially in League One. You've got to be able to roll your sleeves up and battle.
Yeah, I think one of the main differences we've always mentioned about obviously Lee Johnson in comparison to Phil Parkinson is the substitutes. I think, if I remember rightly, I think we waited. I think it was a few minutes before Flanagan got sent off. I think we made our first change, and I think it was a Danny Graham who came off.
Didn't you do like for like, as I remember, didn't you?
Yeah, I think it was an out of form Charlie White came on, and of course an out of form Will Grigg as well. And if I remember correctly, I think it was still only 3 subs then, wasn't it?
Yes,
it was. So I can't give him too much criticism on that side.
Well, I think I said in the post-match, because obviously we'd had Phil Parkinson, and I like Phil. I think he was a smashing fella, but he wore a cardigan for a reason.
Yeah,
he was a very safe guy, and you were chasing the game. You were not chasing the game. You were up to that point, I think, the better side, and you could have gone on to win it if you'd have just rolled the dice a little bit, and instead of going for it, you took off. You did a like for like subs, and that's Phil Parkinson all over. He wanted to win it, but he was also a little bit scared of losing, so he didn't want to absolutely go for it, and that's probably sums up Phil. Bless him.
Yeah, I don't miss them days, I've got to say.
As I say, I like Phil Parkinson, and I think he was dealt a little bit of a raw hand with us but then every manager we've had for the last 10 years has had a bit of a raw deal with what's going on behind the scenes, and just now finally we got some stability. I think in terms of Charlton fans, we're seeing this as, and not everybody, because of course we still want to win, and if we can get to the playoffs, great. But we're more about the next 5 years rather than the next 5 months or 5 weeks. We know that we've got a stable owner. We know that there's money there if we need it. We know that we can go forward. It might not happen as quickly as we want or quickly as would be perfect, but at least we're going forward, which we haven't done for a long time.
I can feel that one. I can relate to that one. I've had a brief look at the Charlton side and the stats from the season. Obviously, Chukwuemeka is your top scorer on, I think it's 12. But in terms of performance, your highest rated player this season is actually Jake Forster-Kasky. How important has he been this season for Charlton?
Oh, huge. I mean, Jake has had a real bad few years with injuries, and the promise he showed as a young player, sadly, just didn't quite materialise over those last 3 or 4 years because of injury. I mean, he didn't figure at all the last time we were in League One because he was out for the season. He just started to come back in the Championship, but obviously he wasn't up to speed. And this season, even though we've gone down, he's just found his form again, and we are a different side without him. With him, he offers drive. He offers the ability to pick a pass as well as tackle. he's almost a complete midfielder for us. And as long as we've got players around him, then we're a strong midfield. Without him, we're a shadow of a midfield, and we can be steamrolled quite easily. We need players around him, though, and sometimes this season we haven't had that because we had at one point we had two midfielders playing centre half, and so he was basically trying to do it on his own. We signed some players who were quality on the face of it, but didn't have the real substance to battle League One, and you need that. Even if you've got quality, you still need the ability to, I've said before, roll your sleeves up, get stuck in, and earn the right to play football. And some of the signings were a bit too fragile, a bit too young as well. Levitt from Man United springs to mind, but we've and Maddison definitely springs to mind. We've replaced that with decent midfield players and decent. Alex Gilby's just come back from injury as well, so we're starting to see a bit more of a solidity about us. And midfield is where we lost most of our goals. I mean, everybody's quick to blame defence when you let in goals, but it starts from the front, obviously. But we were far too fragile in midfield, or have been.
Yeah. Well, moving on to the team news, and of course we'll start with Sunderland. And there really isn't too much difference from Monday's game against Peterborough. Obviously, Denver Hume made his return as a sub on the hour mark, and I cannot describe how much my head will hurt if he doesn't start over Callum McFadden on Saturday. Obviously, I don't want to keep saying he had a bad game, but he was rinsed against Peterborough. As we've mentioned very early on this pod, confidence is a huge thing in football. His confidence right now will be rock bottom because, every time a Peterborough attacker got the ball, they got past him. He just had no chance. So if Denver Hume doesn't start on Saturday, whoever your right winger is will have a field day.
Well, I mean, I have to say, Peterborough, for me, are probably going forward the best side in this division, for me.
Yeah.
And
so, definitely got the best attack.
Oh, no question about it. And because of that, and because they spend such a long time going forward, and the midfield creates that for them as well. By the way, you've got that three: Harris, Schmodix, and I think I'm trying to think the other ones.
Taylor's one of them.
Taylor, yeah. They've probably got the best front three in the division, but still the likes of Thompson and Butler still have to create that for them. So the to get overrun by Peterborough, I think you're not the first. We certainly did at their place, and we've got to play them again, by the way, this season before the end. So
feels favour there.
Yeah. Well, we're going to do our best, obviously, but I don't know too much about the way he plays, obviously, but I wouldn't be too harsh on anybody that got rinsed by Peterborough, when they're on form, because it's happened to pretty much everybody in the division so far. So, I don't know who is it you want to come back?
Denver Hume, our only capable left back, I suppose.
It depends if he's fit enough, I guess. Only the manager will know that for sure, because we were desperate to get players back, and as I said before, we had Ryan Innes and Fanwo. You could see where our frailties were, and even when Forster Kasky was out, we played him probably a couple of games too many, but we couldn't afford to drop him, and that meant that we missed him for games that we otherwise wouldn't have done. So it's always a fine line between making sure that you've got your right players, but not ruining it for your running.
Yeah. Well, Bailey Wright and Tom Flanagan, again, both still very close to full fitness, or at least match fitness, and could potentially, but unlikely, feature in the game in some capacity. From the Charlton end, is there any notable injuries or suspensions going into the game?
Suspensions, I don't think so. Injuries, yes. We had Connor Washington, who's been, apart from Anike, has been our other top goal scorer. He's on 11, I think, now, and just starting to hit form before he got injured, unfortunately. Couldn't make the Northern Ireland squad because of it. So he may be a doubt, because he certainly didn't play over the Easter weekend, and it's whether or not he'll risk him, because we do have Stockley up top. It makes us a little bit one-dimensional with Stockley. He's a great unit, and he's certainly the best second striker, if you can call him that, we've had for a while. He can score goals with his head. You would be surprised if he tried to score one with his feet, because he hasn't managed it yet. But he's a good player. Hold-up play is good. Anike is much better on the floor with his feet, and he can bully defenders. But it depends on the way we set up. Again, with our defensive frailties, it may be that that Chucks will start from the bench as he did on last Saturday, just so as we sort of. It sounds boring, but it just so as we stay a functional unit rather than trying to win the ball, trying to beat you on the floor, which may not be a good option.
Yeah. Well, this will also serve as a reminder for anyone on the Fan Hub app to get your team predictions in for Saturday, or you will miss out on some valuable points. The team that I went for Sunderland as the team that I think could start is Lee Burge, Conor McLaughlin, Dion Sanderson, Luke O'Nien and Denver Hume. I do hope he starts, and I've predicted that he will start. Max Power moving back into midfield alongside Josh Scowen, Lyndon Gooch and Jordan Jones on the wings with McGeady and Charlie Wyke up top. And if you had to predict the starting 11 from Charlton, what would you go with?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if we went the same way. Obviously, Benham's in goal, but we had a back four of Purrington, Pearson, Innes in the middle, and Adam Matthews on the right, and that's a decent balance. So it wouldn't surprise me if he starts the same side that started against Doncaster, and in the midfield then would be Gilby, Pratley, Forster Kasky, and he played Ian Martson, who's normally a left back, a little bit further up on the right, and he scored the goal that won us the game. And then Jayasimi is quite a decent. I mean, he played for Swindon, so I don't know if you came across him when he played for Swindon, but good future prospect. He's a little bit, maybe a little bit lightweight, but he's got some talent, the kid, and so you might start him on the left side of midfield, almost like a sort of a 4-3-2-1 type formation. But I know that that will depend on how you line up, I guess. And then Jaden Stockley up top on his own, and then Nico will come in off the bench. Famwo, who's our other centre half, who's just coming back, had a bit of a tweak, so they didn't risk him on Saturday. He may figure, but I doubt if he'll start him, so he might be on the bench. And then off the bench, Liam Miller's the one that may start in his place. He's the guy we got on loan from Liverpool. He's quick, likes to play on the left, likes to take people on, and good player. Final ball sometimes can be a bit iffy, but a good player. So he might start instead of Jayasimi. That would be the only potential switch, I think.
Yeah. And last but certainly not least, the score predictions for the game. First, a few from Twitter. Lewis,
if you remember me from previous, you know I don't do predictions, but I'm gonna hold out for a draw on this one. That's going to be my thought.
Yeah, I went with 2-0 Sunderland. I've got to be confident.
Well, absolutely, I can understand that you'll be going into all Sunderland fans will be going into this with a level of confidence that so you should have as well on the run you're on. But as I said before, we played quite well away from home, and we've got a renewed confidence about us since the change of manager. So I'm holding out that we'll hold you to a draw.
Yeah. A few from Twitter. Obviously, Paul also said 2-0. Lewis has went with a 2-1. Ethan's gone with a 4-2 for Sunderland. That would be an interesting game.
Yeah, I hope he hasn't put his mortgage on it.
It's going to be a 0-0 again, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
And last but not least, Jordan has went with a 2-2. That's two quite high scoring games, so we will wait and see. But that is all we have time for. It's been a pleasure to have you on again, Terry.
Likewise, Josh. Cheers, mate. And I was serious about. I really hope you guys go up, and I hope you go up automatically instead of having to go stressful through the playoffs. And looking forward to Saturday's first trip up to the Stadium of Light for me. Roker Park was my last visit up to Sunderland, so looking forward to it.
Hopefully being the Championship next season.
Fingers crossed, both of us, yeah.
That would be ideal, wouldn't it? As long as it's not another playoff final at Wembley between Charlton and Sunderland.
None of that, no. Well, we're not going to go up automatically, so you've got to, all right?
We'll shake hands on that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
As mentioned in the previous podcast we did, we're also recording a new and improved quiz tomorrow night that will go live at some point on Friday. I'm not entirely sure when, probably around 5 or 6 o'clock. Some good questions I've got ready to use. That will be a fun one to record, and of course, an even more fun one to listen to and play along with. So keep an eye out for that on Friday. But until then, we will see you soon.
That's all, folks.